Like many of you, I grew up understanding that it is not Christmas Eve until the lights are turned down, the candles are lit, and the congregation sings Silent Night. As a child, I remember the spreading pools of light, like a kind of dawning revelation. Sad, reverential, peaceful, but altogether otherworldly. I remember the song filling the space around us, trembling, swelling, and receding like waves against some dimly remembered shore. And I remember crying and not knowing why. Silent Night. Let's wind up the time machine just for a moment with a nod to the recent Ridley Scott movie and head back to the time of Napoleon and his wars. Many of you know that by the end of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Europe had been at war, almost uninterrupted, for a quarter century. The wars remade the map that we now know as Europe, leading to the creation of both Germany and Italy. Our fledgling nation was sold Louisiana, doubling the size of our United States. Ancient dynasties were destroyed, including the Spanish and Portuguese empires, leading to wars of independence across South America. But back in Europe, over 3.5 million people had been killed in those wars. Entire generations had been erased. Many of you may not know that while these Napoleonic wars were coming to an abrupt end in Belgium, halfway around the world in Indonesia, Mount Tambora was erupting. That volcano erupted for an entire year, eventually throwing enough ash into the sky that from North America all the way across the ocean and covering all of Europe, 1816 was called the year without summer. Months and months of storms and dark skies followed. Crops failed. People starved. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. Lord Byron wrote the poem Darkness, which begins, I had a dream which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished. And in Austria, Joseph Mohr, a young priest serving the Church of St. Nicholas in Salzburg, Austria, wrote a poem. He was trying to inspire a congregation that was poverty-stricken, war-torn, hungry, and traumatized. His friend, organist Franz Gruber, set his words to music. The resulting song was haunting and lovely. So lovely that families of musicians took that song with them as they traveled across Austria. Missionaries then took that song all across the planet. Within 50 years, Stille Nacht had been translated into hundreds of languages and had reached as far as the Inuit communities along the Labrador coast, where it was translated into Inuktitut as Unuak Opinak. And so it was that 99 years after Waterloo, World War had once again come to Europe. This was 1914, and at that time, one Walter Kirchhoff was an officer in the German army. He was also a tenor in the Berlin Opera. And on that Christmas Eve, 109 years ago tonight, Kirchhoff stood up in the no man's land called Flanders Field in Belgium, and he began to sing, first in German, then in English. Stanley Weintraub, the author of the 2002 book Silent Night, the story of the World War I Christmas truce, tells us that Kirchhoff's voice carried very far on that cold winter night. Quote, "The shooting had stopped, and in that silence he sang, and the British knew the song and sang it back." The day after, soldiers wrote home to their families, to their wives, and to their parents saying, "You won't believe this." It was like being in a waking dream. That night, Weintraub wrote, the soldiers recognized that on both ends of the rifle, they were the same. Silent Night. This evening finds our world still at war. Tonight there is war in Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Palestine, South Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and Yemen. And there are dozens more conflicts from South America to Africa, from the Middle East to Asia. So much anger, so much violence, so many families broken, so many seeking peace. Silent Night was first performed on this night 205 years ago. It was written for a time of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Just a small and quiet hymn of hope. But a hymn won't change the world, will it? It won't end hunger or hate or war. It's just a song. But tonight, we sing because we can. We sing because we must. We sing to remember what we have lost, and we sing to remember who we are. We sing for all those times when we forget that we are the same, because that is Christmas. And on this night, we must sing, because hope is always needing to be born.
Visit us at UUSG.org.